What an exciting video this one is going to be. Pros and cons of living in the Mexican war streets, Central Northside, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Are you ready? Let's make it happen. Pro number one is distance to downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have a walk score of 79, transit score of 61, and a bike score of 70. It is finished as the 17th most walkable neighborhood in Pittsburgh. So the distance to Point State Park, it's about a 31-minute walk, about a 10-minute bike ride. That's non-electric bike. And if you're gonna use a ride share, it's around $10 to use Uber or Lyft or whatever else may be coming up. And it's about a 22-minute bus ride and about an 8-minute car ride. And we're talking about the Central Northside right over to Point State Park. I use the central location. Obviously, if you go a little further in Pittsburgh, you can add about a minute or two on. So it's extremely walkable. And I live on Mount Washington. What I do is I bike down to Central Northside all the time whenever the weather's nice to go for a jog. On the weekends, I love to grab brunch down there. The reason why I like it is it's one of the areas that is just totally flat, first of all. It has the North Shore where there's a lot of restaurants and stuff like that, but you can walk all around the north side. You could skateboard around the north side. You can use electric uni-wheel type things, etc., and get from one end to the other in relative ease, to be honest with you. There's a slight slope, but nothing major. A lot of good stuff in Central Northside, Mexican war streets, and I'm going to dig into that in the following pros and cons. So don't go anywhere. Hit the subscribe button, as a matter of fact. Tap the bell. Make sure you get all notifications. You don't want to miss anything. All right. Con number one is wet basements. So I'm going with kind of the minor stuff up front. You don't want to miss the end of the video for my last pro, though. It's one of a kind, let's put it that way. Anyway, back to con number one is wet basements. Now, typically in Pittsburgh, the city limits specifically, we have a lot of old housing. And when I say old housing, it's over 100 years old. So back in the day, they used to literally just stack stone and mix up a little bit of mortar or like sand and put it in the cracks. Believe it or not, that has withstood the test of time for quite some time now, but that's the way they used to do it. Now, you can only imagine a porous material like stacked sandstone or stacked anything is not a very good water barrier, not at all. So now we have all kind of waterproofing systems, but back then it was just acceptable to let water come in. And you think about it, if you've been in an old house searching for houses nowadays, you smell that wet, musty stuff. You're like, oh my God, that's horrible. But that's because we have methods of curing that. But when they had no way of curing that, they just had wet basements, and that was just it. And then technology, improved, and their big fix was let's put a drain. Whenever they built these houses, let's rewind. Those floors in the basement were dirt. Like, they didn't have concrete. Like, they just stacked stone. Imagine this now. Close your eyes, clear your mind, and just picture this. A flat piece of ground, may not even be flat, but we're gonna go flat piece of ground. Somebody coming in just stacking stones on top of each other, right? And then building a house on top of that. So notice how I didn't say they poured concrete in the basement. It's because they didn't. I've been in a couple houses. It's very few and far between nowadays, but I've been in a couple houses where the basement floor is just regular old dirt. I mean, don't be disillusioned in thinking a foundation sits on the concrete pad. It doesn't. Even today, they build the walls and then they pour the concrete in between. So, and then over time, we just, we created concrete, and people would just have bags of concrete because we didn't have concrete trucks. I'm talking maybe 80 years ago, maybe 90 years ago. So they would just mix up the bags of concrete and they would just throw it down. I've been in those houses too. They fail radon tests regularly, where you just have like a little bit of concrete here and just a little bit of concrete here. And it looks like a couple years later, they came back and stuck a little bit more here. And then eventually you got into concrete trucks, etc., where they, just poured a truck in and laid the concrete inside there, and then they would form a drain. So they would let the water come in, it would go into the foundation floor, and then go into a drain. Nowadays, we have some alternatives we can talk about. In the suburbs, what we do is when they build new houses, they build them on kind of like a plateau, and then it's on like a little hill, like a little plateau, and it slopes down. So what happens is as rain hits, goes down the side of your house or whatever, and it hits the ground, plateaus away from the house. Now, if it's not like that, some older houses in the suburbs weren't built like that, so they were, the dirt was equal or maybe even slanted towards that. So when the water came down or the snow melted, it would go into the foundation. So one of our quick fixes, if we can, is we just have like a hill built along the perimeter of the house. That can either be by bringing in bags of mulch, bringing in dirt or whatever. So as water comes down, snow melts, it's whisked away from the foundation. Another problem that could be causing a wet basement is downspouts will go into the ground, and then they went into terracotta pipes, which are rigid. There's no give or flex. And as the freeze and thaw happens, it crushes those pipes and twists them, and all the water is gone into the gutters. Gutters go to the downspouts. Downspouts take the water into this broken terracotta. It doesn't have anywhere to go, so it floods in the foundation. So anytime I see a corner of a old Pittsburgh home foundation that may have some mold on it, or I can tell there's water infiltration, I know right away, chances are it's the downspout. Why? Because on the corners of the houses where the downspouts are. Now, if you have water all along the back, of course, that's a different problem. We're gonna get into some solutions there. One solution is a French drain. Now, we can break that into two different types of French drains. An exterior French drain is preferred. So what happens is they dig along the foundation. I'm not gonna get into the technical aspect of it. Pour a bunch of rock in there, dig on an angle, and then whisks a little water away from the foundation. So that's preventative. Catches the water before it goes into the foundation, through the brick, through the sandstone, whatever. That's the best way. You can imagine sometimes you can't dig up next to a house. There's another house like literally smacked up next to it, or a little alley or something like that, or it's just a whole bunch of concrete. It's not cost effective. So the next thing is an internal French drain. So what that means is you come inside the house. Hopefully the basement's unfinished. If it's not, oh well, what you do is it costs about $7,000 to $15,000 depending how much work needs to get done. It's not a lot of material. It's just some concrete and stone. What they do is they come in, and next to your foundation on the inside, about 12 inches out, they will pound up all the concrete all the way around the foundation, 12 inches out, just tear it out. It's like a trench. And then they'll trench down on an angle, pour a bunch of rock in there. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, water, we can't beat you. You're gonna have to come into the foundation. That's fine, come on in. But when you come in, we're gonna steer you up back out. What happens in maybe not all four corners, but some of the corners of the house is a big trap, so to speak. And it has a pump in there that has a float. So the French drain puts the water into there, and then the water just builds up. Once the float hits a certain level, it knows to pump the water out. You'll see like a white, round, 2-inch diameter tube roughly that takes it out, and that's what keeps the basement dry. Sometimes, just mainly for cosmetics, although people think it prevents water, there's something called parging, where it's like thin set concrete or something like that. You parge it all on the sandstone interior. What that does is that allows you to now paint it and make it more cosmetically appealing. You can put dry lock over, which is kind of a thick paint, and they say it resists or keeps water out, but it doesn't necessarily do that. So parging is more of a cosmetic thing. So that is con number one, wet basements, and kind of a solution to that problem. And the reason why I tell you that is if you're relocating into Pittsburgh and you see a wet basement, it's not the end of the world. There's solutions. Pro number two is the historic homes and new homes. I represent a lot of sellers over there and buyers that they infill. So they find some old homes that are dilapidated to the point where there's just no return, no fixing them up, and they'll knock them down and build brand new homes. So you will have quite a mix of brand new modern homes with rooftop decks and garages and new foundation with no wet basements, etc. And then there's a lot in the Mexican War Streets, especially old homes. And there's a historic preservation there, which all developers and builders hate, but I'm sure the community loves it. And what that does is it just keeps the facade of that historic era. You can't come in and put hardy backer board up. I don't know what happens if you get fined and they make you take it down. I don't know if anybody's even ever tested that, but there is a historical preservation community that you have to go through when you're renovating a house and or building a house in the Mexican War Streets. Con number two is parking. You can put parking in every video I do in the city limits of Pittsburgh. There are no parking garages in the Mexican War Streets or Central Northside. There will be pay-for parking attached to the hospital, but that is primarily for people visiting the hospital or unfortunately staying there. There is pretty much just on-street parking, and that's gonna always be first come, first serve. And the meter maids are out, so you gotta be very, very careful when you decide to try to renegade, park, and not pay for it. But the city of Pittsburgh has an awesome system where they have a bunch of meters, and you can download the app and it'll tell you, hey, your parking's running out, etc. So parking is con number two for Mexican War Streets. Pro number three is going to be down the North Shore, a little off of the Mexican War Streets, but still on the north side, Central North Side, are the stadiums. We have HEINZ Field, where the Steelers play, and there will be a handful of big name artists that have concerts there, like Elton John, Taylor Swift, bands like that. The Beatles, just kidding. And then there's PNC Park, which is baseball only. And I can't say that I've seen too many events there other than baseball. There may have been a concert there a couple times. Believe it or not, you can even rent it out if you're a big corporation. And my friend who owns a party planning type company has had a big big event there once or twice. So pro number 3 is the stadiums are in this north side and they're easy to get to. Again, when it's baseball time, football time, or any of those events are going on, it is just, I like to take my bike down there and ride and just hang out, have coffee, even work outside there because there's just a buzz. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of people coming out, a lot of restaurants, etc. when there's different sporting events. Con number 3 is something new. I was just kind of introduced to that. It's called stoop stealing, S-T-O-O-P stealing. And what this is if you watch the news at all or YouTube or whatever, you've seen it from Ring doorbell cameras. It's unfortunate, but people will just come along and steal your stuff at Amazon, whoever, drop your packages on your stoop. So maybe there's something you could do. I've seen Amazon is even trying to toy around with some sort of container or something that can be unlocked and the packages put in there if they fit, and then somehow maybe when it closes it locks back up so they can't stoop steal. But stoop stealing, con number 3. Pro number 4 is parks. Allegheny Commons, the oldest Pittsburgh park, and it was established in 1867, so well over 100 years old. It's known for its canopy trees, wide promenades, and Lake Elizabeth. Around these parts, we like to call it Northside's front yard. There's usually a large amount of green space, and the Pittsburgh aviary abuts or is part of the park. Part of that green space is going to be a bunch of playgrounds. So in the nice weather, it's always bubbling. There's always different events, etc. down there. Now Lake Elizabeth, I want to touch on that a little bit. It's not really a lake. It's in the park and it's like a concrete man-made type lake where I don't think it's very deep, maybe a foot or so. I think there's just some fish in there, but nobody fishes there. There's an off-leash dog park right there as well. And there's like these little bridges where you could walk over and hold hands with your significant other or your hopefully to be significant other. And you can ride your bike over, etc. So I always ride right through Lake Elizabeth. To be frank, until I did this video, I didn't even know it was called Lake Elizabeth. So I learned something along with you guys. Okay, so before we get into con 4, if you can hit the subscribe button, click the bell, and make sure you get all notifications. It will help you and I out. Also, comment below if you've ever been to the north side, enjoyed Lake Elizabeth, want to comment on any of the pros and cons, have your own list of pros and cons, and you don't want to miss the end of the video. My last con is one of a kind, unique to Pittsburgh, and I can't wait to talk about it. So back to pro number 4, and it's not a big one, but the residents of the Central Northside took a poll, and it seemed to populate a lot with them in the closed Facebook group, and that is a lack of trash cans. I can't say I've seen a large amount of trash laying around or anything, but if you're walking your dog, or if you're coming back from a Pirate game or a Steeler game, maybe it would help to have some more trash cans. But as you can see, if that is a con, that's a negative, the Central Northside is pretty darn good. So pro number 5 is hospital. Allegheny General Hospital is definitely going to be the main employer of all around Pittsburgh. Allegheny General Hospital is on East North Avenue. It's the largest urban hospital in Pittsburgh, boasting 576 beds. They just added a stunning 90,000 square foot, yeah, you heard me right, 90,000 square foot addition, which carried an $88 million price tag and is part of the Cancer Institute. It's all glass with neon LED lights in it. It's really cool. So it's kind of getting away from that hospital feel, if you know what I mean. Not that it makes you want to go there anymore. You don't really want to ever have to go to a hospital, especially a Cancer Institute. But if you do have to go, it's just a little more pleasing than, the stark white hospital. Okay, so con number 5, and this will be our last con, is going to be crime. And I'm going to dig into some of the statistics here. There's 4,128 assaults annually, and we're going to compare that to the national average of 282. So there's quite a bit more assaults. And again, Central Northside is in the city of Pittsburgh. So there's a certain level of expectation of the city life and crime, unfortunately. Murders, 23.62 murders compared to the national average of 6.1. There aren't any rapes. Always nice to have a 0 on the crime score. Robberies, the Central Northside has about 511 robberies annually. And we compare that to the national average, there's 135. So you can see the crime stats are a little bit higher than the national average. Burglary, 1,115 burglaries annually compared to 500. So we're doubling up the national average in the Central Northside. Probably because there's not enough trash cans. People are probably stealing each other's trash cans. I take his trash can, then they take it back off me, and then I take her trash can. So that's probably the reason for all the burglaries. We need more trash cans, City of Pittsburgh. Thefts in the Central Northside, 3,462 compared to the national average of 2,042. Motor vehicle theft in Central Northside is 348 compared to the national average of 284 per year. So not too terribly much higher there, okay? You've made it to the end. We're gonna talk about my favorite thing right now, and that is going to be pro number 6, and Can you guess if you're a local? That's right, Randyland. What is Randyland? So Randyland is kind of like an art museum located in the Central Northside, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's kind of considered America's largest, most colorful public art museum landmark. A gentleman by the name of Randy Gilson is the owner. So Randyland, it kind of played a relatively important role in the rejuvenation, the cultural rejuvenation of Pittsburgh whenever we were down and out. You know, he bought this house back in 1982 on a credit card and just started doing outside and inside art. It now counts itself among one of the most photographed places on Instagram, so make sure you search out Randyland on Instagram. There is no admission fee, and I know a lot of people when they come to Pittsburgh, they always make a quick stop over there. So Randyland was actually in a couple documentaries. One was The Spirit of Pittsburgh, which has Randyland, Randy himself gardening along with Mr. Rogers, and Pursuing Happiness, which has Randy as one of the happiest people in America. All right, and that is it for my pros and cons of Mexican War Streets, which I also include some on the Central North Side and the North Shore. So drop a comment below, hit the subscribe button. Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are and if you have any more pros and cons you'd like me to hit the next time.